Seattle, Washington, July 28, 1935. Rain streaks down the hangar windows at Boeing Field. The air hums with the sound of power tools and chatter. Technicians in oil-stained coveralls swarm around a colossal silver machine, the Boeing Model 299, prototype for the U.S. Army Air Corps' new long-range bomber competition. Standing just behind the yellow safety rope is Edward Curtis Wells, a 28-year-old Boeing engineer with slicked hair and restless eyes. To him, this is more than an airplane. It's the future of air power. He designed its framework to endure catastrophic stress, its control systems to function even after damage. In his words, if a man can't bring her home shot to hell, I haven't done my job. The four Pratt and Whitney R-1690 Hornet engines cough to life, shaking the concrete. The sound rattles windows across the airfield. Pilots Major Ployer Hill and Les Tower climb aboard, adjusting their leather helmets and goggles. The plane, shining like liquid mercury, takes off with a roar that drowns the crowd's cheers. It climbs gracefully over the misty Puget Sound, and one newspaper reporter mutters the words that will become legend. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, October 30th, 1935. The day is calm, skies clear, perfect for a demonstration flight before Army brass. The Model 299 sits gleaming on the runway. Major Hill runs through his pre-flight checklist as onlookers wait, senators, officers, and engineers alike. At 9:30 a.m., the massive aircraft lifts off smoothly. Then, suddenly, it pitches up violently. The engines scream. Moments later, the plane stalls, rolls right, and slams into the ground. A ball of orange flame engulfs it. The cause? A simple oversight. The flight crew had forgotten to disengage a small control lock on the elevator. Hill and Tower die in the wreck. The Army cancels its order, declaring the design too complex for practical use. For Boeing, the loss is catastrophic. For Ed Wells, it's a wound that doesn't heal. He spends nights poring over fragments of the wreckage, whispering to himself, if we can make it safer, smarter, stronger, they'll see. And in that grief, the idea that would change the war begins to take root. Boeing Plant 2, Seattle, 1937 riveters line up along the skeleton of a new bomber. Sparks flash. The smell of hot aluminum fills the cavernous hall. Wells stands among his engineers, blueprint in one hand, coffee in the other. They're building the B-17B, the second generation of the Fortress that almost died. The airframe is thicker, its wing spars milled from solid duralumin. Wells designs self-sealing fuel tanks, layering rubber and treated fabric so fuel won't ignite when hit. He adds powered gun turrets in the nose, tail, and belly, manned by gunners with 50 caliber Browning machine guns covering every angle of attack. Most commanders laugh. Too heavy, they say. Too slow. But the plane defies its critics, cruising above 30,000 feet with a range no other bomber can match. To Wells, it's no longer a plane, it's a survival machine. Make her strong enough, he tells his team. And maybe, just maybe, they'll all come home. R.A.F. Polbrook, England, August 17, 1942. A cold wind sweeps the airfield. The first B-17E flying fortresses of the 97th Bomb Group sit in neat rows, engines ticking like giant hearts. Major Paul Tibbets climbs into Yankee Doodle, his bomber leading the first U.S. daylight raid over occupied Europe. The target, the Rouen-Sotteville rail yards in northern France. At 15,000 feet, flak blossoms around the formation, black puffs and orange sparks. The Luftwaffe appears moments later, Messerschmitt Bf-109s diving from the sun. Gunners shout over the intercom. Bandits. 2 o'clock high. The fortresses lock into tight formation, crossing fields of fire. Dozens of .50 caliber tracers streak through the air. A German fighter bursts into flame, spiraling down. The formation doesn't break. The target is hit. Every bomber returns. The legend of the Flying Fortress is born in fire. Over Germany, August 17, 1943. The 8th Air Force sends 376 B-17s to strike Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the heart of Germany's ball-bearing industry. The formations stretch for miles across the sky. At 25,000 feet, flak rips into them. Shells explode beneath wings. Fighters swarm in. Tail gunners fire until barrels glow red. The sky turns into chaos. Engines on fire, fuselages shredded, men bailing out. In Wee Willie, pilot LT, John Morgan fights to keep control after a 20mm shell kills his co-pilot. A third of his controls are gone, oxygen masks freeze over, and blood pools on the floor. Yet the Fortress flies on, crossing the channel with one engine dead. 60 bombers never return that day. Wells reads the casualty lists and stares at photographs of the survivors, planes with tails missing, wings torn open like paper. He whispers, "She did what I built her for." Boeing Plant 21944. Reports from Europe pour in. Photographs of aircraft riddled, with bullet holes but still flying. Wells gathers his engineers. "Every hole is a story," he says. "Everyone tells us where she lived, and where she nearly died." They study the data and make refinements. Stronger bulkheads, improved turrets, and an oxygen system that won't freeze at high altitudes. Mechanics on the line build each new model faster, cleaner, tighter. The newest version, the B-17G, carries 13 guns, more armor, and a redesigned tail. It's the pinnacle of the Fortress line, the version that will flatten Hitler's industrial heartland. The engineers work through the night, aware that each improvement might save a dozen lives. Regensburg, Germany, February 20th, 1944. The operation is called Big Week, 6 days of relentless attacks on the Luftwaffe's factories. The roar of thousands of engines fills the sky. The air vibrates like thunder. German radar operators watch their screens turn white with returns, over 1,000 bombers inbound. In the lead, Memphis Belle's sister ships streak through formation, silver wings glinting under sunlight. Flak explodes. A B-17 takes a hit to its right wing, rolls violently, yet somehow stabilizes. Inside, a gunner shouts over the din, "She's still flying." That scene repeats across the skies of Europe. Fortresses with holes the size of doors limp home, their crews alive. The design has reached near-mythic status. Thorpe Abbott's Airfield, England, March 1944. In a cold briefing hut, young men sip coffee in silence. The air smells of fuel and sweat. Outside, ground crews load 500-pound bombs under silver wings. Every man knows the odds. By spring of 1944, the average B-17 crew's survival rate is less than 15 missions out of 25. They call it the Tour of Death. Navigator LT, Bill Getz writes home, "If the plane doesn't protect us, nothing will." And somehow it often does. Crews begin to trust the Fortress like a living thing. They name her, paint her, talk to her before takeoff. They swear she saved them more times than luck ever could. For many, she's not just a bomber, she's home. Germany, April 1945. The war is nearly over. The skies once filled with flak now hang strangely empty. The 8th Air Force sends its last great raids against Berlin. A B-17 nicknamed Bit O-Lace returns with a gaping hole through her fuselage, large enough for a man to crawl through. She still lands safely. Ground crews shake their heads in disbelief. By now, Wells is back in Seattle, watching grainy combat footage from Europe. He sees fortresses landing with half their tails missing, engines dead, wings torn apart. His design, his obsession, has outlived the men who first doubted it. Seattle, Washington, May 8, 1945. The war in Europe ends. Fortresses, hundreds of them, line the airfields of England and France, silent, scarred, and streaked with oil. Some will be scrapped, others sold for parts. But to the men who flew them, they were more than machines. Wells stands on the tarmac at Boeing Field as one last B-17 shoo-shoo baby returns home. The engines cough, wheels screech, and it rolls to a stop. He runs a hand along the battered fuselage, feeling the rough patches and bullet scars. He knows what few outside the hangars ever will, that every rivet was a gamble, every beam a lifeline. The B-17 wasn't built to win wars. It was built to bring men home. The camera lingers on Wells as he looks skyward, the echo of 4 engines fading into the clouds. She really was, he says softly, a fortress.